Hello, and in this video we're going to be looking at blood. We're not going to be looking at the blood vessels or the heart, but just what our blood is made up of. The very first activity that I'd like you to do is to mind map everything you know about blood. So what is it made of? What does it do? How does it get around the body? Things like that. So with this mind map, as we go through the video, I want you to tick off if I mention something, if you got it right, and add to your mind map so that by the end you have a mind map that's got everything you need to know about blood. Blood is a fluid connective tissue that flows through blood vessels. It's made of 55% plasma, 45% red blood cells, and just less than 1% is white blood cells and platelets. You may notice that adds up to more than 100%, but that's because all those numbers have been rounded up, okay? I want you to pause the video and to try and answer questions 1, 2 and 3 for me. So the study of blood is called haematology, and you'll know that if you've ever had to have blood tests or going forward in the future, if you have to go to hospital, they have a specific department studying it. Most adults have 4 to 6 litres of blood in their body, and in varying amounts, what else is found within the blood? Things like dissolved food, hormones, drugs, that sort of stuff. Now what I'd like you to do is to draw a test tube for me and to draw the levels of what is in your blood. So I need 55% to be plasma, 45% to be red blood cells, and a teeny tiny bit to just show the white blood cells and platelets. And hopefully you've got something that looks a little bit like that, and if you haven't labelled it, do make sure you label it so you know why on earth you've got different sections. Blood transports materials around the body and it protects against disease. It consists of cells, solutes and liquid. It's like a highway system or a road system in your country that has the job of getting things from factories to households or people to work, that kind of thing. It's your body's version of it, and because you are a multicellular organism made of lots and lots of cells, your cells can't just rely on things eventually floating there. They need a system that helps to get things there, and that's your blood. It's the transport system in your body. The main part of your blood is plasma, 55%, and it's a straw-coloured fluid that transports carbon dioxide from the organs to the lungs, soluble products of digestion from the small intestines to other organs, and just have a little think what those products of digestion might be. Examples would be nutrients such as water, glucose, amino acids, minerals and vitamins. Urea from the liver to the kidneys, and urea is a waste product of many living organisms. Hormones, antibodies and waste substances such as carbon dioxide and urea. Red blood cells make up about 45% of our blood and they float around in the plasma. They carry oxygen from the lungs to tissues and cells, and this is what we need for aerobic respiration. If you don't know what that is, don't worry, it'll be in a later video, but for those of you that do know, remember that the equation for aerobic respiration is glucose plus oxygen. It's carbon dioxide and water. You need that oxygen for your cells to be able to create the energy through their mitochondria. Oxygen transport's efficient because there's loads of red blood cells in your body. The cells are really tiny, which means they're able to pass through capillaries. Capillaries will be in the next video, but they're just blood vessels in your body that go to all of your cells and tissues. The cells have a flattened disc shape to increase surface area, allowing a rapid diffusion of oxygen. Remember, we like to talk about surface area a lot in biology, and bigger surface areas are always a good thing. I always think of red blood cells as looking a little bit like dried apricots. They've got that squidgy kind of shape. They contain something called hemoglobin, and hemoglobin absorbs oxygen in the lungs and releases oxygen in the rest of the body. Red blood cells have a large surface area to volume ratio to allow this rapid diffusion of oxygen. And the hemoglobin absorbs oxygen to form bright red oxyhemoglobin in oxygen-rich environments. And in oxygen-deficient environments, this process is reversed. I'm going to explain this in just a second. Hemoglobin is a protein within the red blood cells which binds to oxygen to form the oxyhemoglobin. There's a little diagram here and you can see the oxygen molecules are combining with the hemoglobin on your red blood cells so that it's able to kind of stick a little bit like Velcro. You've got the oxygen sticking to that Velcro to then get delivered to where it's needed in the body. There's another little diagram here just showing the structure of a red blood cell. So the cytoplasm containing hemoglobin, and you've got the bioconcave disc shape, which increases surface area and gives it more area for the absorption of oxygen. It's also got no nucleus. So it has no nucleus, it has no genetic information, and that gives it more space for hemoglobin and thus oxygen. Blood appears bright red when oxygenated and dark red when deoxygenated. So when there's loads of oxygen in it, it's a really bright red colour. And when there's not a lot of oxygen, it's a dark red colour. In oxygen-rich environments like your lungs, hemoglobin combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. I'm going to show you that with some cutting-edge PowerPoint video animations. We've got our red blood cell. The oxygen combines with the hemoglobin, sticks to it like Velcro to make oxyhemoglobin. You'll see the colours change from that dark red deoxygenated to the bright red full of oxygen or oxygenated. We tend to see this as an equation and you'll see that there's a funky arrow. It goes both ways. When you see this, it means it's reversible. So that means it can go back. So the oxyhemoglobin can go back to the start of that equation, which we're going to see in just a second. So the oxyhemoglobin will drop off the oxygen at our body cells to become hemoglobin again, and that process happens. So all we've done is just flip that equation the other way round. So in low oxygen environments such as our body cells, oxyhemoglobin releases the oxygen to become hemoglobin again. Think of those words diffusion that we talked about in earlier videos, and this is part of the process that it's going from where it's a high oxygen environment to where it's a low oxygen environment, so down that concentration gradient. Red blood cells, in summary, contain hemoglobin, which is a pigment which binds reversibly to oxygen. They have no nucleus, which means they've got more space for the hemoglobin, and they've got the biconcave disc shape, kind of looks a bit like a peanut, which increases the surface area to volume ratio, so it means diffusion will happen much quicker. So red blood cells have a really important job, of course, in our bodies, and it's quite a lot to take in potentially at once. So if any of that didn't make sense, just skip the video back and watch it again. We're going to do a progress check here. So I want you to pause the video and to answer the following questions. To name the parts that make up the blood, which parts of the blood are used in the transport of substances, what substance does a red blood cell contain, and what is it called when that substance binds with oxygen? So the parts of the blood are plasma, red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets. The parts that transport substances is the plasma and the red blood cells. The red blood cells transport oxygen and the plasma, of course, transports everything else. What substance does a red blood cell contain? Hemoglobin, and when it binds with oxygen, it makes oxyhemoglobin. And remember that that's a reversible process, so it can go either way. The next bit of our blood is the platelets. And platelets are tiny blood cells that help your body form clots to stop bleeding. If one of your blood vessels gets damaged, it sends out signals that are picked up by the platelets, and the platelets rush to the site of damage and form a plug or clot to repair the damage. And you can see this here on this little diagram, that as soon as there is a hole or a gap in that blood vessel, the platelets form a protective barrier. Our white blood cells are really important as part of our immune system, and we're going to do about the white blood cells in a lot more detail in a later video. They can engulf bacteria and other pathogens by a process called phagocytosis. That means that they can change shape easily and they produce enzymes that digest the pathogens. Essentially, they're giving the pathogen, the bacteria, the virus, whatever it happens to be, a hug. But it happens to be a hug of death because the enzymes will digest the pathogen and destroy it so that you don't die from whatever infection it is. Other types of white blood cells secrete antibodies that help destroy pathogens. So our white blood cells are super important at helping to fight disease and are a very important part of our immune system. We're going to do another progress check here for which part of the blood is liquid, what are scabs made from, why are scabs important, why do red blood cells have no nucleus, and why does a white blood cell need to change shape? Plasma is the liquid part of the blood and scabs are made of platelets. Scabs are important to repair damage and they also prevent pathogens from entering the body. The red blood cells have no nucleus because it gives them more space to hold hemoglobin, which then combines with oxygen. And a white blood cell needs to change shape for that hug of death or phagocytosis, which is when they engulf a pathogen and destroy it with the digestive enzymes. I'd like you to have a look back at your mind map of blood and hopefully by now you've added lots of new things to it and you've been able to tick things off. I'm just going to give you a second just to add any more notes to it. And the final thing I want to talk about is donating blood. You can give blood if you are fit and healthy, if you weigh between 7 stone, 12 pounds and 25 stone, or 50 kilograms and 158 kilograms, and if you're aged between 17 and 66. If you're older, you can give it if you've given it before. There are some restrictions. For example, if you've had tattoos or piercings recently, then you have to wait a certain period of time. If you're on medication, or if you are at risk or potentially could have something like HIV. So there are a huge list of restrictions, but blood is always in need, and actually you could have a really rare type that could save many people's lives. So sign up if you haven't already, and if you're old enough, go and donate blood. Why not? The next lesson is going to be looking at blood vessels. Thank you for watching.